Happy Thursday. Welcome back to another episode of Calloused podcast. Uh, guys, God is good. Um, yeah. What else can you say? I'm super happy and super blessed to be able to bring you guys these lessons, but not only that, but just all the way around. I'm surrounded and seeing God's blessings, and I hope you take a minute today to see how God has blessed you. Uh, Man, he's just so good. I could just sit there and say that over and over again. Uh, However, we need to get into our lesson. Today we are talking Diocletian. I was going to say that we may take a break for next week just because I know next week, like the day that this video drops, that Thursday, because I'm recording this on Sunday, uh, is it's the start of a busy weekend. It's a really good weekend, a very blessed weekend, but it is a busy weekend. And so, with that being said, uh, I don't know if I'll be able to get an episode out the following week or not. I'm going to try. I am definitely going to try. That being said, I wanted to start off with a Bible verse that really fits the theme of what we're doing here, because I don't think it's one that I had covered yet, at least not to my recollection. So I wanted to throw it in here right at the beginning and get it out of the way, because keeping this in mind while we talk about Diocletian, I think will be huge. So 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 18 through 25 is what we're going to be reading. Subjects, or servants, be subject to your masters with all respect, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the unjust. For this is a gracious thing, when, mindful of God, one endures sorrows while suffering unjustly. For what credit is it if, when you sin and are beaten for it, you endure? But if, when you do good and suffer for it, you endure, this is a gracious thing in the sight of God. For to this you have been called, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example, so that you might follow in his steps. He committed no sin, neither was deceit found in his mouth. When he was reviled, he did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but continued entrusting himself to him who judges justly. He himself bore our sins in his body on the tree, that we might die to sin and to live to righteousness. By his wounds you have been healed, for you were straying like sheep, but have now returned to the shepherd and overseer of your souls. Having that mindset of, even when things aren't good for us, to continue to serve justly, to keep that focus on Christ, to be Christ-like, it's incredibly difficult at times, isn't it? But how wonderful is it when we actually get to do it, when we actually get to succeed, when uh, we put in that effort and we get blessed, because if we do it, we get heaven. Like, plain and simple. Who cares if we get blessed here? Obviously, being blessed here makes things way easier. I mean, I'm doing this from a house that is nice. It's comfortable. It has working electricity and working heat. The the list goes on and on. We have food in our bellies. We have cars. We don't have to walk to work. We incredibly blessed. Uh, it's easier, honestly, to look at the negatives than it is to count blessings. But we definitely need to count blessings. That being said, I have to hang on a second. I absolutely have to clear out all of these thumbnails, or else I'm gonna go nuts. Okay. Pulling up Diocletian right meow. So Diocletian actually hailed from Croatia. He spent most of his time there. He's one of the very few emperors that abdicated the throne. Actually, he was like the first one. It it was kind of crazy. Matter of fact, Luke Griffin even describes it as a moment of like, wait, you can do that? Was kind of like how Diocletian like went about it. He's also one of the very polarizing emperors in the fact that he was one of the ones, or he was the one, really, that Eusebius made the comment about all the, like, how many slaves and everything, or not slaves, how many Christians were murdered, or, persecuted. There we go. I couldn't think of the word. I was like, proselyte? Nope, that's not it. My brain just didn't want to work with me. But he was one of, like, he was the guy that was behind that. So very, very interesting emperor. He gets the throne, or the title emperor, through military chain of command, because of like where he's at and things. And dude, at the time, I mean, we went through it last week, where we're talking about so and so was plotting to kill so and so and so and so and so and so, and a lot of killing, a lot of murder. It basically, the being a wrestling fan and it being the week of WrestleMania, the throne of emperor was almost like, you could almost equate it to the hardcore title in the WW at the time, F days. And so it kind of cracks me up. In a way, it's also sad and sketchy and several other things. But what a just interesting time overall that our Christian brothers had to live in. And especially like with this guy, so his predecessor was Carinus. His successor was two, Galerius in the east and Constantinus in the west. He was co-emperor with Maximian, which he told Maximian, hey, you are, like, we're stepping down. And so I find that really interesting, that was kind of the way that went about it. And it's really interesting that didn't lead to violence. I think it kind of shows Diocletian was feared in certain ways. As a matter of fact, they even wanted him to come back at one point, and he was really enjoying his life in Croatia, which, guys, I don't know if you've ever seen like video or picture proof or like anything, like images of Croatia. It is a beautiful place. Like it looks like it would be a really nice, comfortable place to live, and a really great place to grow cabbages, which I'll get into that in just a second. But like they did like a tour of Croatia for the rally this past weekend, and they're showing, oh, well, this archway was actually built by the Romans. And, they go into some stuff like from when the Jesuits were there and whatnot after the Romans. And it's just really a really interesting place because all this culture is built on top of each other. And not only that, like the Roman tower that's still in the town of, I think it was Zurich. I think is how you say it. Uchek, something like that. And it looks out into the port. Matter of fact, Croatia has one of the very few ports of, I think it was at the time it was a part of Austria. And so I'm giving you this information because, remember, this was part of the Roman Empire at one point, which was huge. And so it was kind of a big ordeal as far as a place, even though it's kind of tiny. So beautiful, view of this port from the tower, and you could really see why somebody would want to retire there. And so Diocletian retires there, and they try to get him to come back to be emperor after the fact, and he's like, no, check out these cabbages, man. Yeah, much rather grow these cabbages than be emperor. Which, I mean, think about it. The dude was one of the very few that abdicated the throne, which means he successfully lived through his reign. none of the guys that we've talked about have successfully lived through the reign. Like, they get killed. So and so assassinated so and so. Back to that again. Uh, so just really interesting how all of that went down. He did end up dying in he died on the 3rd of December. Wow, we actually have that. And it was either in 311 or 312. So he was about 68 whenever he died. His regal emperor name was Imperator Caesar Gaius Aurelius Valerius Diocletianus Augustus. Where did he reign? There we go. So his solo reign was from November 284 to 1st of April 286, and then April 286 to May 305. So what is that? Like 20 years as a co-emperor? I don't know why they did the co-emperor thing. Let's give it a quick Google, because I'm quite curious. Why did Rome? It had to have been because it ended up being such a big empire. I mean, that's the only thing that I can think of, because it was split east and west. All right, so it was to manage the vast, unstable empire more effectively, dividing administrative and military burdens between east and west. Co-rule helped handle simultaneous threats on different borders. Makes sense. Have somebody a little bit closer to deal with those kind of threats. So, let's see. The Tetrarchy, which is the system that we're talking about, co-emperors, it was actually Diocletian's idea. So that kind of makes sense. I do want to see if we can elaborate more on Diocletian and persecution. All right, so the Diocletian persecution went from 303 to 311, and basically what that entailed was anybody that wasn't polytheistic, didn't believe in multiple gods, was a threat. So we got to get rid of the Christians. And that became the goal for him. However, it seems like Maximian didn't really give it much effort, nor did any of the governors, or I think that's what they're called. So it's kind of interesting that it became a thing. But Eusebius claims that this is where it was like over 20,000 Christians were persecuted. It was during this time period. They would burn churches. They would burn scriptures. There was imprisonment. And I might actually see if a friend of mine will come on and we can talk some like Christian fan fiction and stuff like that, because this had to have been one of the areas that was really derived from, since they were seizing scriptures, they were burning them, all that. There was imprisonment of clergy. It's listed here as brutal executions. So the edicts. So the first edict, which came in 303, ordered the destruction of Christian churches, burning of scriptures, and the deprivation of civil rights for Christians of high status. So we had Christians that were in high places, and we're going to strip them of those rights. So it kind of goes back into I think it was by Paul. Yeah, it was Paul who had was that in Philemon? Where was it? I'm drawing a blank on where it was now. Paul's instructions to remain free if you are in that state. I'm actually going to look that up real quick so I can cite it correctly. But being a Christian during this time was very troublesome. However, when people look at Diocletian's reign, you can see things that he did that were okay, that were decent. if he wouldn't have persecuted Christians, he might have actually been a pretty good ruler to live under. I don't know. I definitely think that there are things that I'm missing whenever I'm looking at this. But I mean, to be asked back, he had to have done something right. Okay. 1 Corinthians 7. Okay. Remain as you are. Paul encourages believers to stay in their current situation, married, single, slave, or free, because outward circumstances do not define the relationship with God. That's a summary of the verse. So, nothing wrong with getting married, by the way. I practice it, and I'm very happily married. My wife is quite excellent. I'm sorry. I'm just taking all this in about what we've discussed regarding Diocletian, and trying to remember what I may or may not have said in this summary. I definitely think I've hit the hits, so to speak. I'm gonna double check my notes. Let's see here. His spouse was Prisca. Let's see. Looks like he may or may not have been involved in some of the Macromani Wars. There's some mystery there, for lack of a better term. But I think we've pretty well got the gist on Diocletian. And so, oh, here we go, reforms. This is something I wanted to... So, the Tetrarch idea, administrative, he established central authorities. So for civil service, he increased the number of bureaucrats at the government's command. It's just one of the things. So civil service essentially doubled from 15,000 to 30,000, and kind of continued from there. But he also improved boundaries for the empire, so to speak. And so quite an interesting cat, to say the least. But I do think we will go ahead and wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with me, learning a little bit more about the life that our first century brethren lived in. And I do hope that you were able to get something from this. Thank you guys so much for your time. We will catch you right here, maybe next week, on the Calloused Hands.